Schadenfreude acts as a self-enhancement strategy for covertly narcissistic disordered individuals. Because in the experience of Schadenfreude, in the experience of the joy at the misfortune of others, covert narcissists, in a sense, gain psychologically. And they gain psychologically by feeling some temporary relief from envy, because being aware of the misfortune of others provides some relief. It allows them to make a downward social comparison. And it also allows for the discharge of the aggressive energy that's contained within them, owing to the chronic frustration of the unrealized, grandiose potential that they believe they have. So if I could sum up the ethos of these individuals, it's because I have suffered, I believe I have suffered, therefore you must suffer. And again, we can see that this is a highly aggressive stance to take toward others in the world. So I want to take a closer look at this point at how covert narcissistic personality pathology manifests in various interpersonal domains. If we look at the intimate domain, intimate romantic relationships, partner relationships, as I said, covert narcissists require a scapegoat, and will, almost always, my experience, turn their partner into a scapegoat over time, again, to unleash this unbridled hostility, aggression that arises out of the conscious awareness of their unfulfilled and unrecognized grandiosity. They'll often engineer relationships where they are in the more powerful, superior position, and are mercilessly critiquing and putting down the other, their intimate partner. And in this respect, we begin to see themes of sadism operating in these folk. Now, the scapegoated individual, the scapegoated partner, and this extends to friendships, typically has characteristics of being highly agreeable, conflict avoidant. They're often burdened by their own strong internal critic. So throughout the relationship, these people are doubting themselves, doubting their feelings, doubting whether what they're experiencing is abuse or not. And this is also owing to the fact that covert narcissists engage in behavior that makes it really difficult for people to get a coherent sense or a continuous sense of the pathology, because they can put on the charm, act really focused on your concerns, and then all of a sudden enter into a more cruel, sadistic mode where they can make very cutting remarks, be highly unforgiving, brood and ruminate on perceived slight. So people describe walking on eggshells with these folks. And this is where, for the clinicians out there, we see that in covert narcissistic pathology, we're getting a little bit closer in proximity to the borderline personality pathology territory. Not that these are one and the same, but there are certain elements here. And we know that with narcissism and borderline personality, they cluster together in the same family that we have historically called the cluster B, or the dramatic, erratic, overly emotional personality types. So what are some examples of how this actually manifests? Well, these are taken from cases I've actually dealt with. For example, convincing a partner to sell their property for no good reason, knowing that it would place them in financial ruin, and actually that occurring. A partner gaining, in America you use pounds and here we use kilograms, gaining 60, 70, 80 kilograms in a relationship, being convinced that it's their fault, the weight gain under the relentless abuse, being pushed to have weight loss surgery, bariatric surgery, and then being summarily dumped over the phone once the surgery was over. constant, as I said, criticism and the oscillation between these two modes of a more nice mode and a cruel mode in their relationships. Now, if these folks are confronted with what they're doing, if they're confronted with things feel untoward, they're highly skilled at reframing the situation to make themselves look good, look like the victims, and instill quite a lot of doubt in the individual who's pointing out perhaps a discrepancy in their behavior or pointing out to an overt instance of abuse. And their explanations seemingly make just enough sense to keep the person doubting themselves. In friendships, covertly narcissistic individuals, again, at the level of a disorder or disturbance, show an unusual or disproportionate amount of interest in our troubles, especially during a crisis, constantly probing for information. And what we find is that their friendships tend to be built around the problems that their friends are having. Now, of course, that can happen in an altruistic way. We want to help our friends. But what I'm pointing out here is that the covertly narcissistic individual always brings the other person back to the central focus of their problems, even when the person clearly does not want to discuss the problem. And individual will report that they feel worse after talking with these individuals, with the hyper focus on their problems and getting them to doubt their strengths, getting them to doubt themselves, often in hindsight through covertly aggressive tactics, backhanded compliments, aggressive statements, confusing statements. For example, you're too good for John. You should never have married him. Might be a statement made. And actually, this was an example with someone with covertly narcissistic pathology who befriended an individual over 5 years and really chipped away at the marital relationship and was playing both partners off each other. Statements like, isn't it great that you've lost weight? I was really starting to worry about you. Excuse me. And again, made in a context, not as a one-off, because we could take any of these as a one-off and say, look, what's wrong with that? But with the relentless focus on the individual's problem, with reminding them of their problem, even when it was not in context, not appropriate, always finding a way to steer the conversation back to get you to talk about an area in your life where you may be dissatisfied with,